Setting goals for your podcast might sound a little bit boring, but it's the foundation and the roadmap to get you where you want to go this year with your show. Today, I am giving you a behind the scenes look at one of my calls in my membership. This was a planning session that I did with my membership members, and we go into all of their goal planning and setting for 2025. I wanted to give you a sneak peek at what it looks like to be on a membership call with me, because the membership is something that I'm really keen and excited on growing in 2025. If you don't know, I have a membership for podcasters called the Podcast Success Vault. In this membership, we meet every week for 1 hour and we mastermind, brainstorm, talk about our goals, challenges, and find real tangible solutions to get us through to where we want to go. I love this membership and I love hopping on every week and chatting with them. So we meet on a weekly basis for 1 hour. Some of those calls are mastermind calls, but some of those calls I'm teaching something. For example, this month I'm teaching about brand partnerships and securing sponsorships. In future months, we're going to be talking about social media content creation and planning, how to create a growth plan, and so much more. It is a $27 a month membership, and there's an annual option that allows you to save money. So please check it out. Link is in the episode notes below. This call features a handful of the people that are in the membership. Not everyone hops on every single call every single week. In this week's membership call, I asked each of the members to introduce themselves, introduce their show so you can know about their show, and then we'll get into the planning of their podcast. Let's get into it.
Hi, my name is Jana Stern. My podcast is called I'm Really Into That Stuff. It is interesting conversations with different people in the holistic world, in the etheric space, and the ways that they got into the weird, wild world of woo.
Hi, I'm Gary Mara. I am the host of Your Customer, Your Success, which is all about customer centricity and building success for your career and your clients.
Hi, I'm Caroline Baird, and I host Today's Balance Leader. And after 30 years in the HR world, I'm here to help you realize that you don't have to do it all and burn yourself out to be successful.
Hi, I'm Rob Brody, and I am the host of the Business of Being Dad podcast. I help single fathers rebuild and thrive after divorce so that they can rediscover that it is possible to live a life of joy, fulfillment, connection, and just really thrive in every aspect of their life.
I'm Michelle A. Gill, aka the Grief Curator, and host of Don't Tell Me to Get Over It. I help grievers feel seen and heard and just a little less alone.
I did a lot of this yesterday for my own self as well, to wrap my head around all the things that, we want to create for 2025. Of course, there's the metrics, the downloads, the growth side as well. I want you to think about your show like more holistically, I guess. I don't know. I look at podcasting different than a lot of people do because yes, you're creating a podcast. Yes, you're interviewing guests. Yes, you're bringing people on your show. But at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're creating a piece of content, you're communicating something, or you're sharing something that is going to create impact in somebody's life in some kind of way or capacity. Because if you don't have that type of impact, it's harder for people to relate to the message and to resonate with what you're saying and what you're sharing. If you think about the things that tend to go more viral or be the shows that become more popular, yes, sometimes it absolutely has to do with their status in society, if they're a celebrity or if they're this or they're that. But I've also worked with celebrities who didn't have that same pull, whose messages didn't resonate in the same way because the intention behind the show wasn't actually communicated in their content and everything else that they were doing. When I thought about 2025 and this session today and being here with all of you, I wanted to be sort of a brainstorm. I want you guys to get excited about the possibility of 2025 and all you're going to create. And I thought it would be a really great place to start to just ask you, if you could achieve one thing with your podcast in 2025, what does that thing look like for you? And I'm going to write it down and we'll pulse check it every quarter and just see how everything is going. Or are we putting in the actions and the intentions that can get you somewhere that you can't even imagine or realize? I'll give you an example. I have a client I did consulting work with, and they have a podcast. When they launched it, it was called Agency Office Hours. They're both agency owners, not podcast agencies, just different agencies. And they rebranded their show. And this year they started reaching out to people in their network, CRM companies, payroll companies, all this stuff that eventually they're in the process right now of securing. I want to say it's like close to 6 figures for 2025 in sponsorship money. And they're getting like 100 downloads an episode. So it's like you're not needing these hundreds of thousands of downloads to actually bring money back in. It just has to be aligned. So if your show could achieve one thing, or if you could achieve one thing with your podcast in 2025, what would that thing be?
I want to monetize. I want the sponsors. I want people to get excited about what I'm doing and support it financially, big time. There's so many brands that can fall under the umbrella of what I talk about, and there is no good reason that it shouldn't be well funded.
I agree with you. And then Caroline, same thing. Okay.
I've got to build an audience. Period. I mean, I just started, so monetize would be second down the road.
Monetize can also be a goal. If you could achieve only one thing with your podcast in 2025, what could it be? It could be monetize, but it could also be create brand partnerships that, expand business in other ways, meet X, Y, and Z person in the industry, speak on X, Y, and Z stage, coach X amount of clients. Yes, monetize for sure, but even behind that, Jana kind of qualified it a little bit with supporting the work financially, brand partnerships. But if you could take monetize and go a step deeper with that, what does that actually look like? You know what I mean? Everyone wants to make money. I want to make money from all the things that we're doing as well, right? But it's what is the thing behind the money, if that makes sense.
That's kind of where I fall. It's hard for me to put that just into one thing because it's broad for me. I want there to be a clear purpose and strategy behind what I'm doing. So what I mean by that is, if I would be to put it in more tangible terms, I would like to be able to monetize at the level of $1,000 a month, which would be $250 an episode by the end of the year. From a strategic standpoint, I would like to be able to understand more clearly, okay, how are people moving from my podcast into my circle of influence that eventually they make it onto my workshop, they book a call with me, they make it into my more intimate circle of clients. Setting things up in a way where it's really, really consistent. So once I launch, I am publishing every single week, and the quality and the niche is very clear, and that piece will grow and become more clear as I go through the year. That's how I look at this.
I love that. Rob, when I was doing my goals yesterday, I was writing everything out. And at first I had all these X amount of podcast download, this amount of money in the business, like whatever the actual tangible thing was. And I was sharing them with my boyfriend and we were going through them and he's like, okay, how are you going to do that? And I was like, that's a really good question. And I'm like, I already know how. And he's like, write down the how. How do you go a step further and actually take what you want to do and make it tangible? And so it's those little things. It's in the little details, right? It's the posting once a week. It's reaching out to one sponsor per week. It's creating a new contact or new connection. It's building out the funnel. Like, what are those specific pieces that need to happen to hit that overarching goal or that bigger target? Caroline says monetize brand partnerships, build brand, build community, more leads, more clients. Exactly. So that is really important what you said, to build community, more leads, and more clients, because those are the ways that, we say monetize. You want to monetize through brand partnerships, but also, do you want to be selling through your podcast? Like, hey, I'm hosting this retreat, for example, or Jana, you have this service that you're promoting this month, or this reading. It's the start of the new year. Get your natal chart read. What are the products and services that you offer that you can already kind of loop in to get that messaging really consistent, so that when people hear it again and again, it becomes a no-brainer? I used to think about this for my membership. I'm like, why am I talking about this membership? People will find it if they need it or want it or whatever. And then I started talking about it and people actually started joining. This is really interesting. And then I would talk about it on my podcast. And even if someone isn't going to purchase right away from my podcast, at least they hear, you know what I mean? So if you think about from a strategy perspective, I'm going to give you an example from within my business. My goal is to grow my membership. I'd love to have 40 recurring members every single month in the membership. Okay. And then I'm like, well, how are different ways that I can do that? Well, I can talk to people about the membership. If I'm going to speak at events, I can share about the membership. If I'm doing a podcast recording and we're doing a session that's actually going to be helpful for people, why don't I take that and put that on my podcast? So if you have that one goal, but then what are all the pieces that lead up to that bigger goal? So if we think about, again, if you could achieve one thing with your podcast in 2025, what would it be? At the end of the day, it's about creating that deeper brand recognition and brand presence, right? You need to have that to hit some of the other things that you want to do. But then also behind that is consistency. Also behind that is intention. Also behind that is clarity in your message, right? But that overall vision is going to look different for every single person. So I'm not saying that the only thing that you should want to achieve this year is that type of consistency, because it's not. But it really is up to you ultimately at the end of the day. So if you think about your show overall, what would be one word or one idea that summarizes your show in 2025, or where you want to head or where you want to go?
If you're going to put this on the podcast, I'm not going to share my whimsical wish. I'll tell you this. My professional wish for my podcast is to kind of help launch my professional speaking career, because really that's what I would like to do. I want people to be like, oh, I have to get Michelle to come speak to my group. I figured that is a way to do that, because that's a way for people to get to know me for free. The whimsical wish was to mesmerize more people with my voice and make them fall in love with my voice. Because so many people will tell me, especially if I'm doing meditations, oh, wow, I could just listen to you talk all day and I feel so much calmer and I feel safer. And I'm like, perfect. That's what I'm going for. I want you to feel like you're in a safe space. So that's my whimsical wish.
I think that's so cool. And I think that you definitely hit the nail on the head. Can I also just share with you, Michelle? I also am not plugged in. I don't have my mic. The only one sounding like a professional podcaster today is Gary.
Should I go with my radio voice?
Yes, you should. But you know what, Michelle, as you're saying that, I love that, because when we had launched your show and started creating your podcast, there were so many times when I would edit your podcast, I felt like I was transported to a different place with your voice. And I actually had to go back and like re-edit things again, because I was like, hold on, I think I might miss that breath or miss that thing, because it was so captivating. That's a really, really, really cool goal. And so if I were to go back to the one word or one phrase that describes your podcast's future, what would you say if I were to ask you that question just off the top of your head?
So for me, the one word that I wrote down was opportunity. I feel like that's an opportunity to build partnerships. There is obviously the opportunity for monetization. That's almost like a secondary result of all these other things.
Yeah.
There's also an opportunity for lead generation, to repurpose the content, and even just a place to point my audience towards in social media or through the DMs. My phrase for this year is simplify to amplify, or like another way of saying that, do less better. So I really want to do fewer things, focus on fewer things, and do them at a higher level. And so that's what I've been leaning into the end of this year and going into next year. I feel like I have a pretty good grasp, and I have very clear criteria on how I am doing that from my business standpoint. I'm not real clear yet on how to use my podcast to assist with that.
Okay.
So that's what I need to figure out here.
Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else want to jump in?
I was just going to say my word has got to be success, right? I call the podcast Your Customer, Your Success for a reason. It's not just going to be simple CX stuff that's been done. It's designed to help people with the things I was struggling with, that I had to go out and seek knowledge on my own. And even just the CX thing, more of a structure behind customer success management, and even the technology, the AI stuff. There's so much crap out there. People bloviating, I'll just say it, about AI, and they don't know what they're talking about. They're just saying stuff to say stuff, and getting to the root of what that technology actually is and how it actually could benefit you. Even your career success, lead, we already touched on it. Thank you, Caroline. Leadership, coaching, and things like that. Helping folks see the light a little bit, the way my brain has worked the past year, and sharing all that stuff with them. And hopefully that is something that's going to attract a bit of an audience.
I love that. I think that's awesome. Caroline, go ahead.
Yeah, so I don't know if you read my newsletter that I sent out yesterday. My word for the year is ascent. ASCENT. When I think about how it applies to my podcast, it's all about growth and empowering leaders. How do I get that to inspire action? And I wrote a couple things of how I'm going to use it. Is helping you ascend to your highest potential in leadership in life. And then use that as a reoccurring theme in my episode. Always focusing on tools and strategies to rise, which I I always try to do on my podcast, I'm always about examples and takeaway tools. Like, how can you actually apply it to your own job? I think what I need to get better at is when I'm interviewing people, because I think I'm good when I do the solos. I think it's when I get guests, making sure their story is part of the ascent to inspire listeners to take that next step.
Okay, I like that. And that can be mitigated, if you will, by structuring a question around that. So again, I go back to my Happiness Happens podcast when like in situations like this, because if the intention of the podcast is to understand what happiness means to other people, the first question I'm going to ask is, what does happiness mean to you? It feels different than, tell me about your story, tell me about your life, tell me about the last 10 years that got you here, right? So it's about structuring the conversations so that people are kind of hooked from the beginning. When you think of the overarching themes of content creation as 2025 and onwards, if you think about just video content in and of itself, the way that content is structured changes. You can go on to your podcast and start off with, hey, welcome back to the podcast. Hey, we're talking about this today. But what if instead you started off with the one tool that you need for leadership growth this year isn't what you think it is? Or you might hear this statement and you might automatically think it's going to be, working harder. But I'm going to tell you today that it's actually not that. What it actually is this. So you start to pair in your intention with the direction of the conversation of the show. If you look at all of these pieces, I feel like this is like a whole spider web of stuff. It can be simple as like, yeah, okay, I just want to do this thing with my show. I just want to make money from my podcast. But it's like, is the conversation interesting for people? You know what I mean? Are you getting to the meat of the conversation, the exciting part of the conversation right off the bat? When I'm doing interviews, if we're talking about emotional regulation, narcissism, personality disorders, I want to understand that stuff, but I don't want to waste 15 minutes with, hey, how's it going? Or you did this, or we did this. I just want to get right into it. I'm going to ask a hard-hitting question off the bat to spark that interest right away. Jana, do you want to share any like word or podcast future vision thoughts?
And just to share with everybody else, when you fill out my application to join as a guest on my website, I have a question that I ask everybody, and it's usually the final question. What you've just inspired me to rethink. It's still going to be the same question for every guest, but now it's going to be the first question that I ask them.
I love that.
To start. Just a thought for everybody else if they're not doing that.
Okay, let me roll off of that for a second too, because if I think about 2025 and I have my own thoughts and predictions of how the industry will continue to go and grow, one of the big things is going to be focusing on what your completion rate is of the podcast episodes. How long are people staying on your episodes? Are they just starting and hitting play and listening for 5 seconds or so and are like, okay, I'm bored of this, let me move on? How is the conversation structured? It doesn't have to be a big thing. It doesn't have to take the fun or the joy out of it. It's just being intentional with the way that you're navigating a conversation, right? If you think about interviews in media in general, when you think of an ad slot on a TV show like Oprah or Ellen, they're getting into the nitty-gritty right off the bat. And so there's a reason why that works. What I was going to say is having that, the completion rates. So when it comes to your overall show, it's thinking about like your completion rates and thinking about how long are people staying and are people actually feeling, what's the word I'm looking for? Are they engaged in the conversation you're having? If yes, why? And if no, why not? So we can look at our different tools like Spotify for Creators, Apple Podcasts, like Podcast Connect. You can go in there and you can see what those numbers look like and how as Spotify for Creators, you can see how many people have found you. And then out of that, so let's say hypothetically the number is 1,000. Out of those thousands of people, how many people clicked through to click play? And then after that, how many decided to subscribe or listen for more than 3 minutes? If you're wanting to see if episodes are landing for people and if your content is landing for people, then you want to look at that data. Because now I'm going to flip this and go to the monetization side. If that's one of your big goals is to monetize, you need to know where your listener is. You need to know what their retention rate is. You need to know it for a couple of reasons. You need to know it because of your sponsorship agreements even. If you're selling ad spots in your podcast and putting them at the end of your show, but no one's making it to the end of your show, that's not going to be a lucrative or a good return on investment for your sponsor. So it helps you structure the different things that you're going to do within your podcast when you actually look at the data and you look at the numbers. Just wanted to throw that out there as a side caveat. Okay, Jenna, go ahead.
A couple of things as per what Michelle was sharing. 2025 is the year of stages and speaking and being out there in the world in a really big, big, big way. I want for my podcast, I think one of the things that I've been thinking of is that on my podcast right now, every episode is an interview. And it's me speaking with other people about their stories and the stuff that they're into. And I think what needs to happen is there needs to be a 20-minute episode in between week to week, because I post bi-weekly on my podcast where I'm actually talking about what I see, what I know, and things, because I have incredible guests and also I am an interesting perspective on a lot of things. That's definitely one of the things that I've been thinking about. But really, the word is expansion. That is the word I am seeking for 2025 or living into in 2025. Expansion feels like expansion of reach, expansion of finances, expansion of client, like new clients, but also return clients. I have a group / one-on-one coaching program that got launched softly that is silent in the background, and it needs to be brought to the foreground. I'm no longer focusing on these one-off readings. I really want people to jump in for the 6-month program or not, because I want to be able to touch in with my clients however often they hire me for. There's 3 options. There's the group tier, there's one-on-one weekly, and one-on-one monthly. So if you only need a little bit or if you need a lot, all of those things are available. So I'm hoping to really, it's not even a huge number that I want. I want 10 clients in the group, and however many of those are one-on-ones is good for me. But that's like the numbers that I'm aiming for. Right now, the podcast is like a separate entity from me, and it just needs weaving so that I can expand in the podcast and the podcast can expand, and all of those things continue to overlap. Yeah. I also have the goal of finishing my Oracle deck, which is taking its sweet time, but it will finish. And when it does, talking about crystals and each one and why and all the things that I know around that, I could go on about that stuff. Yeah. So there's a lot monetizing. There are so many brands that could support this podcast. And my story with it right now is I have so many episodes and not nearly enough listener or viewership on YouTube or on Spotify. And I'm like, no one's going to sponsor me, but there are literally dozens of episodes. There's no good reason why somebody couldn't go back and listen to all those episodes. I just need a bigger brand to come on board and be like, go listen to this girl and the conversation she's having. So
That's
that's
fair.
really what, and then bring me wherever they're going internationally to speak.
No, I think that's really good. This brings up quite a few different thoughts that I have, Jana. So the first one is me being your friend, okay, in real life outside of, here. Jana and I have known each other for years. I had no idea that you had a group program. So let's start by talking about the things that we do. It's so funny. And, I think that can be something that we're not always great at. It's not that it's uncomfortable. It's just like there's so many things around sales that it's like, oh, I don't really want to be salesy. I don't want to be there. I don't want to talk about this specific thing. I don't want to bother people. I don't want to this. I don't want to that. But then it's if you don't talk about the things that you're doing, nobody is going to have any idea what you do. I had a friend say to me earlier in 2024, her name is Anna. Her handles the podcast space. And she's like, Simona, you have so much knowledge and you never share anything. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm working with clients. We're doing sessions and strategy sessions and people are taking their shows and doing all this crazy cool stuff. And she's like, yeah, but nobody has any idea that you're doing any of that. And I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that. I didn't realize. Exactly. Having that said, I'm thinking 2 different things here. I'm going to keep going with this session, but I want your take on this. The first thing that I'm thinking is we do a brand sponsorship session where I give you guys different ideas and framework and teach how to do that. One of my intentions for 2025 is to at least take one of the sessions every single month that we're doing together and make them a teachable session so that you're actually learning different things and staying relevant and consistent in the industry. But then I'm thinking on the flip side of that. So I'm thinking maybe if we did that for next week, did a brand sponsorship session, and I can share some examples and show you some of that stuff. But I'm thinking maybe the 16th, we do hot seats. And depending on how many people hop on, I'd love to be able to give everyone like 15 minutes where we all just focus on you. Rob, for example, hey, okay, I want to create a lead gen strategy. How do I do that? You know what I mean? We can dig into the nitty gritty to actually support your overall bigger goals that you have. And honestly, we could do 2 people per session. We can pour into everyone, and I'll leave 10 minutes at the end in case anyone has any questions, just to make sure that you're not going in your week being like, what am I doing? If that sounds good to you all, that will be the plan. And I'll send that out in email. It sounds good. And if you're listening to this on the podcast right now and you want to join us, please feel free to click on the link in the show notes and come and join us in the membership. We're going to have a lot of fun. Michelle, do you want to hop in on this part here as well? One word that describes your podcast future?
Well, of course, I asked my friend Chad, and it said either guiding the heart or voice of comfort. But also, I probably need to talk to you one-on-one because last night I had a bit of a podcast New Year's crisis.
Tell me more.
Like on my podcast, that is authentically me. That's one facet of me.
Mhm.
I love the production. I love it all. I love the choosing of the music, blah, blah, blah. I'm tired of the music already. Hi, I'm Michelle, and I'm an ADHD podcaster. I get bored. Also, I think there's just been, I'm just going to be honest. So no episodes came out in December because December was a very shitty month. Came out of that, kind of, you know what? I'm tired of the BS. I'm tired of the social media thing where it's look at me, the finished product. Don't look at all the crap that went behind. Don't look at the messy pile in the corner. I'm so done with that. But I want to sit with it and meditate on it to see, is this a reaction to things that happened in December? Is this a new direction that I want to take the podcast? Because part of me is like, I just want to talk to you, the listener. I just want to have a conversation with you. And sometimes my love of production, I think, I don't know, maybe it doesn't. I'm not the listener.
I get what
I
you're
just
saying.
wonder. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I do get what you're saying.
right now it's, oh, I'm here in my kitchen talking to you, the listener, but you're technically in my kitchen with me. And I'm like, but you aren't. I'm trying to create an atmosphere, which is fine. But at the same time, I just want to have a real conversation because grief is real and it's messy and dark and crappy. And yes, we can rediscover joy together. But right now, for me, it's the messy, difficult side, even heading into the 7th year. I want to bring that aspect in because I think that will actually resonate even more because it's real.
Yeah. I have a question for you. How do you create the atmosphere without feeling like you need, and I'll leave you to maybe journal or meditate on this question. How do you create the atmosphere without setting a specific atmosphere that they have to be a part of? Do you know what I mean? How do you create an experience for them using sound design? Because I know you love that. How do you create that experience for them without placing them somewhere so that you take that stress off, that it doesn't feel like you're having to tell them where they are and all that stuff, and they're just listening to a conversation? You could say, as I'm sitting down to record this, or as I'm sitting down to have this conversation with you, it's just you and I, and we get to have, you know what I mean? And then that makes it feel like, oh yeah, it is just you and I. I think this would be an amazing hot seat for you, but I would encourage you to think about how you just have a regular conversation and then create an experience with it as well. Those two worlds can intersect. And I don't necessarily think that you need to do all of this extra stuff to achieve it.
Well, it's not even that I'm doing extra stuff. I guess I started to think, am I making it more difficult for you, the listener, to actually process things? I was talking to friends of mine yesterday, and I was like, look, I'm a guide, not a guru. I'm not there to tell you this is how it's going to be. I'm just there to hold the space. I'm the container for you to process on your own because that's what needs to happen. Yeah. Okay. I will think about that. Thank you.
Then also think about, how do you integrate your mailbag questions? Because I know that's something that you wanted to do. And I think maybe that would help bring in some of the different type of conversation. Do you know what I mean? Just directly in by answering those specific questions. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll think about that.
Okay, that sounds good. So we have about 20 minutes left. And in that, you don't have to finish all of this today right now because you might not be able to, but you may be able to. I want you to think about, when it comes to goals, what are 3 different goals that you want to accomplish over the next year? one big one that you really want to achieve. And then I want you to give me an action step for each of those goals. You can give me one goal right now, but 3 ideally. 3 goals you would like to accomplish next year. And if the podcast, if it ties into something else that's like bigger overall, because I truly believe that, the shows that we create, especially if you're creating them as part of a brand, they're an extension of you. So a lot of the times, in order for the show to reach the level that you need it or want it to be at, there's also things that need to happen within your own self. For example, Happiness Happens, my podcast that's been on hiatus since May, that I just was like, you know what, I think we're done recording for this year. And maybe we'll come back in 2025, which we are. But there's a lot of emotional stuff that I needed to clear out before I could even think about going back to doing that podcast.
Well, mine would that big goal is definitely that having the podcast be part of launching my professional speaking career.
Okay.
But that's huge.
I love that. Action step to get there?
Oh, but that's the big one. That's the very big one.
Still needs
Not
an
the
action
3.
step.
It's not one of the 3. It's the
Still
big
needs
one.
an action step.
I have to think about that.
Okay, I will come back to you. You can just give me a one-word answer. Like, you can say post more episodes because I'll hold you to it.
I'm going to give Michelle the cheat code because that's also my big one. And the step I'm going to take is to create the Canva doc that sells me, that I can like sell my podcast and me as speaker, that can like the things that I speak about, what are the different subjects, because part of my problem, or it's not a problem, part of my opportunity, I don't know, is that I speak about a lot of different things. It's not just one specific topic that I'm going to talk about. Pretty much anything you can put me in a room on, I'll have something to say about it. There's definitely a need for me to tailor it and professionalize it, make it look really clean, marketable, and simple to send to different retreats, events, hotels, whatever it might be. There's all these things happening all of the time. I have a PR team, and they'll probably be the ones who will do the reaching out for me. That's on the list of things that we're going to chat about in the coming days. But yeah, that's definitely something that I'm thinking about. The other 2 on my list are getting sponsorships, just creating a spreadsheet of brands that would be likely to want to work with me or my podcast, and then start that outreach. And then the last one is to grow my listenership. And I think the way to do that is for me to talk straight to listeners, straight to camera. That's my best work, is when I speak straight to camera. We have interesting conversations, but it's me that people want to listen to.
That is really powerful to know about your own self, because when as it relates to podcasting show, I had guests on the podcast every single month. I'd have a guest co-host and we would talk about one specific thing every month. When I looked at all of the data and the downloads, and you'll start to see this too, Jana, as you start to do solo episodes more consistently, you'll start to see the numbers and how different they are. My solo episodes were doing better than my guests, with my guests' reach and my guest sharing. And I was like, that's really interesting. And then I started doing solo episodes. I can't remember the exact stat, but I honestly think that the increase in downloads was like 182% or something like that. And it was nuts. I was like, this is crazy. Okay, Rob, Caroline, Gary, who wants to go first?
I can jump in.
Okay.
So my first 2 are pretty simple. I don't have a current podcast that is active at this point. My number 1 goal is to relaunch my podcast by the end of January. And the first action step, again, very simple, is to choose the specific date that I'm going to launch by the end of this week.
I love it. Share the date with us in Discord for also multiple reasons. I'm going to share it in my newsletter as well. So I just need to plan.
Okay.
I love that. Choose the date. That sounds great. Okay. What else you got?
My second goal, again, pretty simple, but it's to publish a new podcast every single week for the duration of 2025. And my first action item is to create the first 3 episodes or next 3 episodes before my launch date.
Love that. And to help you get ahead even more, the same resource that I was sharing with Jana, the production schedule, or a production schedule in general, because that has dates on it that you can go in and play around with the dates, and then you can plan your episodes, batch them, and record them a little bit more in advance.
Love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Third
And
one.
my third goal. So my third goal, I'm calling this a big goal because I have not generated any income at all from my podcast at this point. I don't know how realistic this is, but I'm going to go for it. And I just put generate $20,000 directly from my podcast.
I love
through
it.
sponsorships or affiliate promotions.
Love it. I love that. Okay. Love that stretch goal.
My first step for that is identifying 10 potential sponsorships.
Love that. You can put those in that production schedule sheet as well, so you can keep track of them. And one key thing too, if you're reaching out to sponsors on your own, keeping track of when you pitch them and then when you follow up. So typical rule of thumb, like you pitch them, give it 7 days. Give it 7 days for people to like whatever after that follow up. But I will cover more of that on the actual sponsorship teaching that we do next week. I love those are awesome, Rob. I love those. Okay, Caroline, Gary.
Yeah, I just started. So goal number one, I've got to build an audience, right? It's the consistency, an episode a week. I might move to 2 eventually, but for now, 1 a week.
Okay.
And the other one there is start being a guest too on podcasts.
Can I
You know, so-
caveat that, Gary? For
Yeah.
anyone who's looking to add more speaking to their roster in 2025, starting to be a podcast guest on other podcasts is really key. It helps you clarify your message and it helps you know what you're talking about. And it helps you know what you don't want to talk about. Because even though, like Jenna, like you were saying, like you can talk about anything, honestly, I could talk about literally everything under the sun when it comes, not actually, but like some things, but there's specific things too that I'm just not excited to talk about. But you don't really know until you start doing those interviews. But yeah, speakers, start there. Keep going, Gary, keep going.
A branding and credibility, right? Because
Yeah.
that's really why I'm doing it for the most part.
Yeah.
It's not there because I just started. So I've got to build that credibility and the branding. And it's just a matter of getting episodes out there, number one. But number two, just redefining my focus as I go along because it's morphing a little, but that's fine. I think the other action step I could do there is just get honest feedback when I get a bunch of episodes out there. The problem is I got to have somebody who's actually listening to them to give said feedback.
People are still listening. Even if it doesn't feel like a lot, you got to remember, even if you're getting 10 downloads an episode, 5 downloads an episode, it's like talking to a room of 5 people. It's still 5 people. It's still 10 people. It's still 50 people.
I recognize I just started over a holiday
Yeah.
season, which wasn't ideal because I didn't get my date down to you and it just got a lot of hand. The big one at the end is monetize, but I can't think about that yet down the line, sure. But I think the action step there is I got to do 1 and 2.
Yeah, I agree with you. But and as soon as you set the intention and you put that intention out there, then it
Right.
will follow because you have it in your awareness, right?
Yeah,
Now,
I do have a couple of partnerships already, believe it or not, but I've got to think about how to incorporate those.
okay. Okay. I can't wait to hear more. Those are great. I love them. Thank you. Caroline, go ahead.
Yeah, so I combined 2 that I originally had because I came up with another one. You know me. Big goals. So expand my reach and use impactful storytelling. So building a guest collab campaign, if you will, and then really using that intentionally to build how I speak to them. What's their leadership, personal growth for my podcast to grow? That's the first one. Being more selective on guests. 2 is advertising what I do. I've started doing that. I've started also offering to be a guest on other podcasts. I've recorded 2 already. I don't know when they're coming out, but my last one was just a holiday one on the 24th. But I actually did a commercial advertising something that I'm doing during the podcast and doing that more often, but also looking for people who I can swap. I'll advertise yours, you advertise mine. Obviously monetize. So I actually wrote down hire Simona to review my analytics with me and truly know my listeners. And the people that have reached out to me and have said, I really love this episode, taking the time to reach back out to them and say, what else do you want to hear? What are your challenges? What inspires you? What can I help you with? If they're listening, why would I not listen to them? And then my big goal, which will probably, I'm thinking more fall, would be doing a live event that's kind of like a panel with 3 to 4 experts. So what's the hot topic in that leadership space? And then who are those experts that I can bring, and we'll do a live panel episode.
That'd be awesome.
But that'll take time.
Absolutely. I think that's amazing. These are amazing goals. I'm so proud of all of you. I wanted to ask really quick on the obstacle point of view. What do you think will be the biggest obstacle for each of you to achieve all of these different things? Just so I can understand where I need to hold you more accountable.
I think for me, it'll be intentionally putting this time aside to build the campaigns, to get organized, to reach out to people. It all takes time, right? And so I think accountability partner, and I hate saying that because careful what you wish for. I think that would really help me to achieve what I need to.
That sounds good. Thank you.
I would agree with Caroline, except it's not time. For me, is with my ADHD brain, it's distractions and just not wanting to do it, even though I know it needs to be done. I would say it's not even just an accountability partner, but a body double for me. Somebody who can just be there, like on a Zoom, and be like, "Did you do it yet? What did you say you were gonna do?" Okay, yeah,
Co-working might be good for you.
yep.
Gary, go ahead.
I think the biggest obstacle is building the audience and getting known. I spent a gazillion years working for the same company, just
Yeah.
being a worker bee. I feel like the people I've worked with are like, what the hell is he doing? Because it's funny because I get a lot of impressions on the LinkedIn stuff and I don't get a lot of comments, but I see everybody looking at my profile. So they're like, what the hell is he doing?
Oh,
Like,
yeah. People are
it's,
always watching. It's wild.
yeah, for me, it's just getting out there and getting known and getting my name known. I think I'm the opposite. I don't think anybody's listening to me right now. Why would they?
Because you're Gary.
But I
But you
mean,
That's
want
big
right.
deal.
to
But nobody knows what I have to say or that I actually have half a brain. And I've been doing this customer thing for 30 freaking years.
Yeah.
But I never call myself a CX person because I don't stare at NPS scores all day long. Anyway,
Gary, do you have a bio for
yeah,
yourself?
I've got 9 bios. That's part of
And Sim got me on this in Facebook. There's a group, Find a Guest, Be a Guest,
Mhm.
which is a great place to go. I've actually got 2 that I reached out to over the holidays because now it's the new year. People are looking for guests to record for the year. So it's a great time to do that. But I would say, and I'll offer, flip me your bio of what you want to talk about.
Mhm.
And if I know anybody else, send them your bio and make a recommendation. I think
Okay.
that's what you have to do, start networking more that way. That's what I've started doing, and it's actually starting to build some traction.
And I think the other thing I need to do is some solo episodes too. I've just been so preoccupied with figuring out how to do this, getting guests, getting a book, getting them to record. Oh shit, I got to edit this thing.
Yep.
How do I do that? Which one am I using? And it ain't working. Oh, now I got to do shorts, and I got to put a short out there, make sure my guest face isn't like this. Like because you can't update the damn thumbnail. Anyway, figuring this whole thing out, right? It's time consuming that I haven't really just sat back and focused.
One thing at a time. You can't do everything all at once. You have to get the first process down before you can move on to the next process and the next process and the next process. So all of that will come as you continue to go on. But I'm definitely going to challenge you to solo episodes this year. I
Yep.
think it's really good. I love it. Thank you.
Yep.
Rob, go ahead.
For me, I think the biggest obstacle is always myself. At times, it has been confidence and that anybody would care about what I have to say. I've kind of worked on that quite a bit over this past year. For this upcoming year, the biggest obstacle is patience, being patient, trusting the process, kind of leaning into what you just shared a few minutes ago about even if there's 5, 10, 20 people listening, that's still talking to a group of 5 to 20 single dads potentially. And, I pay money to get 20 single dads in front of me to listen to me for 20 minutes to talk about ways that I could potentially help them. Trusting the process. I also wrote down leaning on my mentors like you and kind of trusting the advice that I get. We are in these programs for a reason. Sometimes I hear it and then I don't follow it. And so kind of leaning into advice and trusting that.
I love that. Jana?
Yeah, I think my challenge is that I lost a lot of faith. I lost a lot of faith. I lost faith in people. I lost faith in myself. I lost faith in the plan. I lost faith in reality. I lost faith in humanity. And so the feeling is something like, why bother?
Make a solo episode about that.
Yeah, right.
No, seriously. I feel like that's the comeback story.
The comeback story is the story that has been unfolding in Florida. But yes,
Yes. Yes.
it
But-
all doubles. It
Mhm.
all links. Because
It does.
believe me, that it has made me lose even more faith. Not having the faith because it comes and goes a lot. There's a feeling that I won't have the drive to do it, that I won't have the faith that is necessary to motivate things to get accomplished. That has definitely been a theme. That was a theme of 24, big
Mhm.
time.
I love that. I think that's really powerful. I think it's really important, and I think it's really necessary because a lot of the times people just assume everything is fine, everyone is fine, everything is great, everything is dandy, like all that. And exactly what Rob is saying, many of the topics we talk about are deeply personal and can be emotionally draining, especially when we're trying to be honest and authentic. There's always that line between authenticity and sharing and this and that. And I've posted social media posts before when I was going through my divorce and this and that. And people were like, oh my God, are you okay? And I'm like, no, I'm literally fine. Everything is great. Things are actually okay. And everything's fine. It's a weird line because it's how people interpret things on their own. It's the balance of the things. It's the balance of life, of humanity, of authenticity, of our true feelings, how we feel. And I think that's what I love the most about this medium because it allows you to communicate that and to share it in a way there's not someone telling you how you have to say it or how you have to share it. And you'll be surprised when you start sharing your actual truth. You're going to find the people who agree and who want to hear that.
Do you think I need to, because I post the videos of the interviews on solo episodes, I have to speak to camera, or can I just make it a podcast?
You could probably just make it a podcast. And what I would do is I would take like a cover on Canva or something like that. I would throw a cover on it and I would put them on YouTube. I don't think you need video for that. I always think there should be some kind of like video element of it, when you're doing a show, but I don't think you need to have video if it's going to take away from the message you want to share. I had a client, we grew her channel to over 1,000 subscribers in a few months. She had just an audio podcast and we took a graphic and we put the graphic over the video and she would share the video on YouTube and her stuff did fine. She added video eventually because she wanted to, but don't let that be the thing that stops you from sharing the message.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about it. Obviously, I have no problem on camera.
But sometimes it's just easier. Like if you're out for a walk and you're like, I just want to literally record this one thing, if you're creative when you're driving, like I get my best ideas when I'm in the middle of the highway. I'm like, great, this is perfect
Right.
time. Oh, no, I love that. I think this is a wonderful conversation. And let's end this on a higher note. The biggest thing that you are most excited about for 2025, opportunity, biggest thing you're most excited, that one thing, and go.
Travel.
Ooh, girl after my own heart.
Wait, just in general or for the podcast?
In general, can be podcast related too.
I'm holding my excitement until after January 20th because I have no idea what hammer is going to be coming down on some of us in certain sectors. So I'm going to wait.
So potential, possibility, great. Okay.
You got me by surprise on that one. I'm just the entire thing. I mean, like I said, I'm just starting. Just the possibilities that are out there by doing this, and the doors and the conversations that are already opening. That's me excited.
That's awesome.
Yeah, kind of similar to what Gary just shared. I'm just so excited to. I'm this close. I'm very close to being able to replace my previous healthcare income with my coaching.
That's amazing.
And I'm so excited about the opportunity to live a more free life as my kids get older. And it just lights me up to work with these dads. It's so exciting. It's so rewarding and emotionally draining, but I love every second of it. And I have this new sense of like energy and purpose that I haven't had in a long time. So I'm just excited to lean into that.
Oh, that's so good. I love that. Caroline?
You know mine, darling. It's financial freedom. It's that ability to have that security underneath you and be able to do whatever it is in the moment that you want to do. Like you could travel and do your podcast, do your coaching from wherever you are. So financial freedom.
I love that so much. Okay, before we wrap up, thank you all so much. Thank you for being so honest and vulnerable and authentic and for participating in all of my questions. I hope that this planning session today was helpful for you. I hope that it helped bring more clarity and intention to what you're going to be creating. And we're just getting started. So I'm really excited for 2025 and for everything that we're going to get to do together. Our call next week will focus on brand sponsorships. Then we will head into a couple of sessions for hot seats specifically. And then I'm thinking we bring someone in to talk about speaking. And then we do a session about social media marketing and how to create that plan. How does that sound for you all? Does that sound good? Amazing. If you have any questions until then, just go into Discord, drop them there, and I will see you next week.